Hi, everybody, and welcome to our last session today. I am doing just a tiny bit of the host duties as well as being the presenter. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Becky Heil, and I am the district consultant for the Southeast District for the state of Iowa. I started my career as a children's librarian, and I always like to sort of bring that up when I'm teaching or doing something at Kids First, because that really was where my first love was. And so I still do really enjoy youth services. But I really enjoy what I do right now. I get to teach, I get to travel, I get to meet librarians, and I get to do consulting with staff and trustees. The reason I'm doing this one on putting together grants for your library, number one, we know there's a lot of people who are, I beg your pardon, who are very interested in that. We see it on all the surveys that we do, that's information that people are really looking for. And we don't really have somebody at the state library right now who's got a really good handle on where to get grants. I have done a presentation on how to write them, but in terms of finding them, we're a little bit lacking. So I've done a little bit of research, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today as we go through. I was able to take back many moons ago a week-long grant writing class through the Grantsmanship Center out of Los Angeles. And so I'm drawing on a lot of that as I put this together, as well as a presentation that Alicia Pike and I did several years ago. So we're going to talk today about three pieces of writing a grant. We're going to talk about the why. Why should you be writing a grant? Why is it important? We're going to talk about where to find them. And then we're going to talk about how to actually do that. So this is a quote that I really liked. I found it. It happened to just be somebody from University of Northern Iowa. And what I like about this are there's three parts to this quote. The first one is, you want a superior proposal. That's really going to be key as we keep going through here. You want an idea that is really top notch. That's sort of the second thing. You want to have it well written, and you want to have a really great idea. And the third thing that I think a lot of people forget about is that we also want to match the funder. And we'll talk a lot about those funders that are out there and what it is that they're looking for when they're reading your proposals. So I like to start with, don't write a grant. There's a lot of reasons why you should not be writing a grant. When your board comes to you and says, we're really short on money this year, the city cut our budget, so go out there and write a grant. That's a terrible reason to write a grant. That is not why you ought to be writing a grant. If you're just in it for the money, it's going to come through in your proposal, and it's very unlikely that you're going to get funded. Another reason to think about whether or not you should be writing this or putting this proposal out is if you don't really have the expertise to follow through. If you don't have the staffing or the expertise or the backup support to be able to do it, it also will shine through in your proposal, and it's unlikely that you'll get funded. Another reason that we talk about not writing a proposal is you need to think about the amount of effort that you're going to have to put in for it. Sometimes they take a long time, sometimes it's just a quick little form, versus the amount of money that you're going to get. There are a lot of really small grants that are out there, and it's great to think about getting $600, $800, or $1,000. If it takes you 8, 10, 12 hours to write that grant, stop and think about what your salary is, the other people that you're going to have to draw into this, and what it's going to take for you to do that, and make that judgment call. Is it going to be worth the time that this takes and the energy that I have to put into this for that amount of money? Sometimes it's an easy yes. Sometimes you have to think about that a little bit. Another thing I want you to think about, particularly as youth services librarians, is you want to make sure that you have the support of your organization. If you've got this great idea that your library director is not in favor of, it's going to be really difficult for you to get that grant. Or if your director and your board is not in support of this project, or even of you spending time writing the grant, it's not going to be worth it to you. It's going to be very difficult for you to get those grants. Obviously, if there's no need for the program, or the idea that you have, the project that you're trying to put out there, if you can't really identify that need, don't bother writing the grant. That kind of goes back to that, if you are just doing it so that you can get money into your organization. So why should we write a grant? Do write a grant for these reasons. If you have this really great idea, something that would be absolutely spectacular and necessary for your community, something that's unique, something that only you as a library can do, those are all really good reasons to write a grant. And to make sure that you've got the time to develop it. If you are right smack in the middle of summer reading and it's going to be a halfway job for you to get this grant off because it's due at the end of August, it's probably not worth it this year. Think about maybe postponing it to the following year. A lot of these grant cycles are year after year after year. And so maybe you've got a great idea, but you're right smack in the middle of some other big project. So start thinking about it now, investigate a little bit, but hold off actually writing for it. So only write it if you've got time to actually do that. You also need to really have a good conception of how that idea can become reality. If it's just this idea that's out there and you're not quite ready to sort of put it into words and make it something that's realistic and doable and achievable, don't write the grant yet. Kind of wait. So once you have that achievable idea, that's when you want to do it. The other big thing, and we're going to talk about this over and over and over today, and that is you have to be able to demonstrate a need for the development of that idea into a project. So write that grant when you have that really, really critical need that's out there and that you can articulate that really well. So now that you know why you shouldn't and why you should, so we know kind of the whys about it, let's go a little bit into the hows of how we're going to do that. I have seen actually the grants session that I attended, that week-long session, came up with these 4 rules, and I have seen these reiterated all over the place in articles and websites. There are 4 things that I want you to think about that we kind of call the primary rules of grant writing, and we're going to go through each of those. The first one is know your funder, and I'm going to give you some tips on how you can find some of that information a little bit better. Don't go into this thing blind. There is a lot of information out there about these funders, and the more you know about them, the more successful your grant is going to be. Know what their priorities are. If there's a funder who is only talking about, they really like funding things for kids, but they're really into health right now. Maybe it's health and wellness, or maybe it's other particular, diabetes in youth or something. They will make that really clear on their website and some of the other places that we're going to talk about that. So if you as a library are going in there, you think, oh, I can't write anything, I'm not going to be able to help kids with their diabetes because I'm not a hospital or a clinic or a school. But think about how you as a library might support some of those other organizations. So think about things like maybe you need to purchase books that would be useful for that. So it may not be an actual program that you're doing for them. So know what it is that funder is interested in. And certainly sometimes it's education. Sometimes they're very, very upfront about it. It's libraries. That's who it is that they want to help. But make sure you know that before you go into it. Certainly find out what types of things they funded in the past. And again, I'm going to show you some places where you can go to get that information. Another thing that I probably will also talk about several times as we go through this, that is talk to them. Most of these places have either a website or even a phone number where you can call and say, I've got this idea for a grant. Do you think this is something you'd be interested in? And they are very willing to talk to you about that and say, well, that's not something we really are going to fund. So, right up front, that's not something they're interested in. Or they may be able to tell you, well, we might be interested in it, but if you slant it this way, or if you change your project just a little bit, now you've got a much better angle when you write that proposal. So be sure to talk to them. I've attended several places where they're talking to the foundation directors, and that's something that they tell us all the time. They really do want to talk to you and hear from you. One of the stories that I tell, I was working with in my county, and I was looking to purchase some laptops for a mobile laptop lab that I could take out and do some training. The library down the road was doing the same type of project. She was also going to write for some laptops for a laptop lab. Well, we started talking about it and thought maybe this makes more sense. We know collaborative projects are usually looked at favorably. That's sort of a big trend right now, is they want to see working together with other people. So we called the funder and said, look, we both want to do these two separate things, but basically they have the same aim. Would you prefer that we do a collaborative grant? We expected them to say yes, and turns out the answer was no. They liked funding libraries. That was the answer that they gave me when I called. We like to fund libraries. We'd like to give you both money so that you can both go out and do this. So call them and talk to them. You never know what those answers are going to be. Again, as you're looking at those funders, find out what makes them unique. Are they a family foundation? We'll talk about some of the types of foundations a little bit later, but what is it that really makes them tick? What is it that makes them unique from other funders? Obviously, be sure to read their guidelines. We'll talk about following those rules a little bit later, following their application formats. Know the requirements for eligibility. Please don't spend your time working on a grant that you're not eligible for. One of the stories that I like to tell about this is those of you who've had kids who have applied for college scholarships. They've got all these really crazy scholarships that are out there that have all these really bizarre rules. I don't know that this is a true one, but this is only available to students who have red hair, who were born in Connecticut and play the banjo. I mean, they can be very specific as they're looking for things, and your funders as well, in the same way that a lot of those scholarships are out there for those very small populations. A lot of these funders are the same way. Geographics is one way that they tend to limit a lot, but there are a lot of other ways that they try to limit too. Know what their overall policies are, certainly know what their deadlines are. There's two other things that I think funders really want to know when they're talking to you or when they're reading your proposal. The first one is they want to know that you can achieve what you're actually saying. Have you been successful in the past? So make sure that that's information that you get out there when you're talking to them. Do you have qualified staff that is actually able to run this project? They really need to know that you are going to be able to make this work. This is something that is a quote, I believe, way back from the Grantsmanship Center, and that is, funders do not want dependents. You need to let them know how you're going to continue to fund this project. They don't want to fund you forever. They want to give their money to somebody else next year. So you need to be sure that you understand that about your funder, that they don't want you, back again and back again and back again. You're needing this money to kick it off or to get your capital ready to go, and that you're going to be able to take this on and this project is going to continue. The other one that I think is really important that sometimes we tend to forget, and that is they want to give you money. They are required to give you money. That's their sole purpose for existence, is to give out money. So if you kind of shift your thinking from, I'm competing or I'm trying to do this, to I'm helping them spend their money, which is what they have to do, that's a really good way, I think, to look at grants. That's one of the biggest ideas that I hope you take away from this. And I just realized I don't have my clock out here, so I'm going to have to pay attention what I'm doing here. All right, so the next big one then is follow their rules. Every grant funder that's out there has their own set of rules, and you just need to make sure you follow them. First piece of advice, read all of the guidelines before you even start thinking about it, then go back and read them again. Again, be sure to ask them any questions as you go through it if you don't understand those submission guidelines. I actually have a really sad story from my grant thing, something that I had done. I was always really good at getting grants. I think, for the first, 10 years or so, every grant that I wrote, I got. There was one year, I was always one of those people who turned things in at the very last minute. I was working on them, and, I literally had some where I was turning them in at 11 o'clock when they were due at midnight. So that was sort of my bad plan, and I will tell you a little bit about that later. You want to make sure that you get those in early, and the reason you want to get those in early, this particular year, the granting authority changed their rules. They used to have, you had to have a certain percentage of something, I can't remember what it was, or you had to turn in a piece of paperwork or something like that. And I didn't read it super carefully, and it was at the very end of the time I turned the grant in and I got turned down. Because I missed this one important piece. I went back to them and I said, look, you changed the rules in the middle of the thing. And she said, you're right, we did. And everybody else that turned their grant in early, you know, a week ahead, we contacted them and said, oh, you forgot this one piece of information. And they were able to get it and get it turned in on time then with this new piece of information. Because I waited till the last minute, I was not able to get that in. So, you know, telling stories on myself, follow the rules, read it again, and then make sure you get it in early enough so if you do have a problem, many times they will come back and contact you and say, look, you forgot this, or there's something missing, or if you change this, it would be a better proposal. So again, be looking at those things like the restrictions. Sometimes with some of the federal grants, there's actually a restriction on the font size when you're filling out their forms, or what the size of the margins are. So be sure you follow those very, very carefully. Play by their rules. A lot of times they will even do a review. If you get it turned in really early, you can send it to them and say, you know, what does this look like? And they'll say, again, you know, change this a little bit. You can take that grant back, rewrite a couple of sections, and resubmit it at that point. And then the last one, I think, is do your homework. Not the last one, we've got a couple more yet, but do your homework ahead of time. Again, you know, looking at the rules and certainly looking at what those funders are trying to get from you, what it is that they really want. A lot of times people will talk to you about the amount of time that it takes to write a grant. And I never found that to be true, simply because of the amount of work that I had done previous to actually sitting down and writing it. Much of the time, I had spent a full year thinking about this grant. You know, what is my need? I was out there doing research and finding out what it is that the community needed. I was out there getting statistics. I was talking to people in the community. I was thinking about how my staff might actually make this grant work. I was thinking about the businesses that were out there that could help me with this, or where it was that I was going to buy those products that I was going to need to do this. So I maybe spent a whole year thinking about this grant and just throwing slips of paper in a folder, or putting things into a notebook somewhere, so that when it comes time to actually write the grant, you've got it all right there. And then what you can focus on is the actual writing. And you'll find in that way, it really doesn't take all that much time to actually get it down and fill out the form, because you've done all that homework ahead of time. All of that preparatory work is going to come in really handy. So you may be thinking of ideas right now, but it'll be 2 years before you actually get to the point where you're ready to write that grant. Another piece that I want to talk to you about with the homework is have things in place at your library as a whole, things like your strategic plan. How does this grant idea fit with that strategic plan? The more of those connections that you can make, the better off you're going to be. So look at what it is that your institution as a whole is trying to do, and figure out where this great idea fits when you're doing that. So again, it goes back to some of that institutional stuff, those, you know, the goals that we keep talking to you about, the mission statements that are there, the objectives that you have. Hopefully, you know, writing this grant shows up as one of the objectives in your plan. We want to provide a place for kids to come after school that's safe. So I'm now going to write a grant for furniture and a renovation of our youth services space. So make sure that those kinds of things get in your strategic plan. That's all part of that doing your homework. And then this one, I say this over and over, so I apologize for those of you who've been in sessions with me before, or folks who have done strategic planning with me. You have to focus on people's needs. Libraries don't need anything. Libraries don't need furniture. Libraries don't need software. It's your community that needs those things. So focus and always make sure that focus goes back to people's needs. And I actually first heard that, and like I said, I've been preaching it with strategic planning, but I actually first heard that, libraries don't need things at that grant writing workshop that I attended. So that's how funders look at it. This isn't for you. It's not for the library. It's for those people that you serve. It's for your community. So to me, this is really the most important rule of all of them. The grant is to solve a problem that exists in your community. It's to help you serve your clients. Absolutely use surveys. We're going to talk about some of that. Use surveys, use statistics. There's lots of good information out there to help you prove that need, and that's going to be a big part of your grant as you're writing that. We don't write to get furniture. We write to help people. So now we know why we should write a grant. We kind of know how that we're gonna do it. So we're going to take a look at where are we going to find this information. So I talked a little bit about finding that right match. There are a couple of different types of foundations, and again, this isn't super critical information, but it kind of helps to have this in the back of your head. There are independent foundations. There are family foundations, and they tend to be local. You probably know about some of them. There may be some that you're not aware of, though, so I want you to kind of think about those family foundations. They tend not to give large grants. They tend to be a little bit smaller, and they tend to be very focused, but make sure you know about that money that's out there. There are also corporate foundations. Those of you who are in the eastern section of the state, I think Alliant Energy is where most of the folks get their energy from. They have grants that are out there. So corporations have money that they have to give away in the same way that family foundations do. There are community foundations, and we'll take a look at that website in a second here. And then certainly government organizations. The big one, obviously, IMLS, the Institute for Museum and Library Services. It's very difficult for individual libraries to get that. They are a huge part of how the state library gets our funding. And then we turn around and give some of that to you. So, think of us that's at the state library as also a granting organization. We're not able to do it every year, but every couple of years we have a variety of grants that we give out. So make sure that you're thinking about us as we do that. So kind of what's ahead as we're looking at finding that right match, I want to take you out and talk to you a little bit about the Foundation Directory online. That is free for all libraries in Iowa, and we'll talk about that in a second. We are also going to talk about community foundations, and then I've got a real short list of a couple of places that you can go, some of those smaller grant opportunities that are out there. It's really difficult to find an exhaustive list, so I've got a couple of places where you can look and a couple of blogs that you can subscribe to where you can get more up-to-date information about those. So with that said, I'm going to start with this. I'm not going to try and see chat here because it's too hard for me to try and manage all of that. But I am going to ask you, I hope that all of you know about this Foundation Directory online. And if you don't, it's because we've done a bad job at the state library. We have purchased this and we have access to this for every public library in the state. And I have to tell you that I just got a notice this morning that there are only 140 libraries out of 530 whatever there are libraries in the state that are actually making use of this. This is an incredible product, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit later. We're going to actually go out to the website and take a look so that you can see one of the best places to go to get information about where to find grants. So you are going to find information about this either from your district consultant, your district LRT, or on the state library webpage. There's actually a clickable link, and I think we'll take a look really quick and I'll show you where that is as well. So if you are not one of those 140 libraries that has this, I really encourage you to take a look and make sure that you get out and get that on your website. The cool thing about this is that it's got a dual use. You can certainly use it as you are writing grants for the library, or I know there are a lot of library directors who also write grants, or at least help write grants for their community at large. Whether it's the city government or the fire department or the parks department, librarians are frequently helping those groups work on those grants, and this will be very helpful to them. But it's also available for the general public. So when that preschool teacher comes in and says, I want to write a grant because we need to renovate our building, or our roof is leaking and it's unsafe and I need to get some money to be able to do this, do you know, are there any grants out there? You can help point them to this foundation directory online, because it's free for you and it's also free for your patrons. I also have a bit of brand new news that actually just came out this morning, and that is, in the past, the foundation directory was only available in your building. So your patrons had to come in and use it at one of your public computers. However, Marie has been working really hard with the company that works with foundation directory. And during this time of the crisis, they are opening it up so folks can get it from home. So that's a huge piece of news. Once you get this up and on your website and you know how to use it, and I'll show you a little bit of that in a second here, where you can go to get that information, make sure that you start promoting this product to all of those people, all of those nonprofits who are working out of their houses right now, who can't get to your library, that might want to start working on some grants. So just all kinds of really great information about this. Yeah.
There were two questions.
Yep.
Lily Smith is saying, can we access this if we're a nonprofit library? I guess I'm not entirely sure what you're meaning by that. Are you, not a public library? I guess I'm a little bit. Would you like to open up and clarify a little there, Lily? Or
yeah, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So I am the head bookmobile librarian on Antelope Lending Library, and we're an independent nonprofit bookmobile. We offer service to the Johnson County and surrounding county communities that aren't able to access public libraries in the traditional way. So we're entirely grant and donation based.
Hello, nice to see you. I've heard of your group before, so I'm glad you're here. And I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be eligible to use this.
You could certainly use it, but you'd have to go through one of the local libraries. I don't believe, because of our definition of a public library, since you don't fit that, we're not legally allowed at the state library to give those services out, but you absolutely could get access to this, and particularly now from home, through any of the public libraries in Johnson County. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
You bet. Was there another question, Jay?
You just answered it, but Jay Rupert, she said that the foundation directory online is available only when using our library Wi-Fi. So you just answered that they're opening it out, and they've had nonprofits have been asking, and so you you covered it all.
and thank you to Marie for getting that for us. There may be a timeline, it's only open till the end of June. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think it said April 30 at least in the email.
Well, maybe that's longer. Not very long.
No, that's not right. I'll go look and see and let you know.
Okay, thank you. I don't remember exactly what the email said because I was so excited to see it. I just scribbled it and put it into my...
It did have a date. What the date is confusing. Okay, so I'll wait for you to switch over and then I'll put that in.
Okay, I am going to get out of this presentation, maybe.
Yep, that worked.
Nuts. And, but why am I not able to get... There we go. And I am going to go to... I'm going to do another share here. Right out to the foundation directory website. All right, are you seeing that?
Yep.
Yay. Okay. So I went through my local library to get in here. I had to have my library card, and I put in my card number, and it authenticated, and it got out there. Actually, before I go there, I'm going to go. Oh, nuts! I lost that one. I thought I had that. Hang on. On our webpage, I want to show you. There we go. All right, so now you're seeing our webpage, yes? I hope. All right. So at the bottom
Sorry,
of this,
yes.
thank you. Thank you. At the bottom of our webpage, yeah.
Sorry, it is April 30th. I just checked the email, and there's
Well,
the
that's
text
not
from the
very long.
email.
Y'all better get on it then.
Yeah.
And maybe they will extend it if things
don't.
go
Yeah,
longer than that. But
don't
at least
assume.
for now, it is available outside the library walls if you log in through your library. Give them a little bit of time to get that all set up. But so at the bottom of our State Library webpage, and I can put this in the, well, no, I probably can't put this in the chat because I can't manage chat and that at the same time. There is this clickable link here that says submit your library IP address for access. Again, talk to your LRT or your district consultant and we'll make sure that you can get that. But once, this is the first step that you have to do to get access to this. So if you're not one of those 140 libraries, absolutely this is where you want to start. All right, so now, oh nuts. Well, let's hope I stayed logged in. Yes, I did. Good. All right. So now you should be seeing the Foundation directory online. Once you've got it at the library and folks can either get it from home or from inside your library, this is what it's going to look like. So I am going to just do a couple of quick searches here. Let me get my cord out of the way. Let's just do small libraries. And I'm just going to do a search. I mean, this is about as simple as you can get to start this off. This is a huge database. Someplace I have those numbers. There are 14 million grants that are listed in this foundation directory online, 14 million plus. There are 140,000 grant maker profiles that are out here. It's available by keyword search, and then it also includes the 990s, and I don't really have time to go into those today, but take a look and see what those are. They're a different way of profiling a particular organization. So you'll see we've got grant makers, we've got grants, we've got recipients, and then we've got the 990s. When you click on these, it actually just takes you down to a different section on the page. So you can click on it, or you can actually just scroll down. So you can see they're under grant makers. We've got 13,000 grant makers that are giving grants that fit the category small libraries. If you remember, that's what I had that I typed in there. So small libraries is what they used as the search term, and there are 13,000 of them. So now you can just get a list. If we'd have clicked on that, it would have taken us right to here, and you can actually get a list of those grant makers that are out there. But I want to keep going, and I want to show you, if you clicked on the orange grants, there were 110,000 grants out there for small libraries that were categorized under small libraries. I really got excited when I saw DeWitt up at the top here, because that's one of my libraries, and I thought, oh, but it's DeWitt, New York, so we don't look at that. However, if you look at this, this is actually sorted by the date of when the grant was awarded. So we actually do, for now, have an Iowa Public Library listed in the top 5 search results. You can see there's 110,000 grants that have been awarded since 2019, and they're all listed here. So let's see, I want to see what I was supposed to do there. You can sort by state. I don't recommend it. If you get on here and you start playing with it, go for it. But when you sort by state, it lists all of them, and you can't do the pages more than about 4 or 5 pages in advance. So you have to go, to get to Iowa, you got to go through 1,900 clicks in order to get there. So I don't recommend that. If you do the up here, you can export. That would be a little bit easier to do, or actually down this one. You can view all, and then you can just export it out there. But I want to show you what you see then. So let's click on Tabor Public Library. And now we can see the grant details. The recipient was the public library. They got $60,000. It was in the year 2020. And here's who gave them that money. You can also see a little bit more. They used it to construct a new building. It was under the subject, the keyword public libraries, which is why it showed up. The geographic area that it served, and then again what it was being supported by. Let's click now and say you want to do a new building and you need some grants for that. So now they gave Tabor $60,000. Let's find out a little bit of information about the Roy J. Carver Charitable Trust. We click on that, and now we've got all kinds of information about them. They talk about what do they fund. They fund education. They've given $103 million to educational organizations. Take a look at the map. They are very specific. They fund Iowa and a little bit of Illinois and what this state is, Pennsylvania. They gave one to somebody in Pennsylvania. You can also see, and this is really interesting and useful for you as you're putting together your budget, you can also see the amounts that they typically get or that they typically give when they do that. So you can see that they don't very often give more than $1 million. That was a very tiny percentage of what they give out in their grants. The biggest amount, though, is $100,000 to $500,000. That tends to be the grants that they look at and that they fund. So just think of all the information. And again, you can keep going down here. Now we have a list of all the libraries that got grants from the Carver Foundation. So you can see these were some. Sioux City got some money. They also got $60,000. And again, if you look over here to the right, you can see that typically $60,000 is what they're giving libraries. You can click to see another list. Stratford Public Library got $5,600. Shellsburg got $3,000. Swaledale got $2,500. So again, this is all information that you can use as you are putting together your grant if you're going to be writing a grant to the Carver Foundation. And then obviously all of the information that's over here, more information about them, what their interests are, what their financials are, as well as how you actually apply for the grants and what their timelines and everything are. So let's go back really quick here. I gotta pay attention to time. One thing that I want to tell you really quick, I think, you know, there are a ton of videos out here. I obviously don't have time in an hour to show you all the ins and outs of the foundation directory online. I have lots more things that I want to talk to you about. But if you scroll to the bottom of that page, you see a link here to videos. And when you click on that, I am going to go ahead and stop sharing this now. And I'm going to bring my PowerPoint back up. And I will share. Uh-oh. Are you guys seeing that, or did I stop sharing?
You stop share.
Okay, now I got to get back out of this again and do my share. Sorry. Okay. So when you go to that video link at the bottom of their page, it will take you to their YouTube channel, and you can see all of the videos that they have. A lot of them are fairly short, 5-10 minutes is all. They have a few longer ones, but when you go to their videos, well, I don't know if you can read any of these, but navigating your search results is one that I took a look at. Let's see, there was another one, advanced search. So that kind of helped you figure out how to sort of narrow down. Searching by phrase, that's the one I'd actually suggest you start with, that very last one down there. It's 2 minutes and it helps walk you through how their searching actually works. So take a look at that, you know, couple of points. Make sure you contact your LRT or your consultant, or go to that website and make sure you get access to this, and make sure that it's up there and that you can promote this to your patrons and that you know how to use it. The next one, I don't think I want to take the time to go out here, but I want to talk to you a little bit about community foundations. A lot of you probably already know about your local community foundation, but I want to give you just a little bit of information that I found out as I was doing a little bit of research on this. These community foundations actually came through what is called the County Endowment Fund Program. It was created several years ago by House File 2302, and through that, what they've done, what was happening was there were, the state limited the number of places where you could have gaming, casinos, riverboats, those kinds of things, dog tracks. The city had, the state had a very tight grip on that, and there were only a few that were allowed in the state. Well, all of that money was going to those local counties then that were allowed to have that. So the state sort of stepped in and said, all right, we're going to take some of this gaming revenue and we're going to spread the wealth through the rest of the state. And so it was that community endowment fund program where they are starting to share some of this money that comes from the gaming industry. That they started all these community foundations. And again, you can see down at the bottom, it's iowacommunityfoundations.org. You just go to the county that you're in and click on it. Again, these are people who are they are organizations that are set up to give away money. That's their sole purpose, is to give away money. Besides the gaming revenue, they are also taking in money from donations that come locally. They can also manage, I'm going to put in a little plug here, they can also manage foundation money. So if you've got somebody in town that wants to donate a lot of money to your library, instead of having them donate it to the library, talk to your community foundation about having them set up a foundation for you. They are very open to that. They manage the money for you. They can manage the grant process for you. And so that when you go to get your money, it's a much simpler process for that. So I recommend them for that, as well as for being a place where you can go and get grant information from them. The other thing that I will tell you about this is they started with each individual county having their own county community foundation board, and they were trying to manage their own grant process. So in the early days, it was kind of messy. There were sites that for 12 years said, our county community foundation website is under construction. Literally for 12 years it said it was under construction. What those counties have done now is, if they don't have the local expertise to be able to manage the website, manage the grant process, they have sort of gone under the arm of some of the larger ones. I know the Dubuque Community Foundation manages several of the county ones. So if you're in Jones County and you are going to write a grant to the Jones County Community Foundation, you're actually going to end up doing it through the Dubuque County Foundation or Dubuque Community Foundation. So just be aware of that. You'll click on your county, but it may actually take you to another one of the larger foundations that's out there. So that's another really great place to go when you're looking for money. This is just one of the resources that I found when I was out here. Follett, of all places, has a really good website where they have put together a huge amount of grants. They've organized them. So when you go to the Follett grant site, you can click on leadership. So if you're looking for something to do in your library or maybe a school library or something where they're trying to do leadership things for kids in the school building, you click on leadership and it will take you to the grants that are out there nationwide that have to do with leadership for kids. So this is a really great place to kind of start and get your feet wet as you're looking for some of those individual ones. And again, I just did some really quick searches, and there are so many small grant places out there that you can find. Things like AT&T has them, Lowe's has something called their Toolbox for Education. Target gives grants. The Intel Foundation gives grants. Dollar General, a lot of you are probably aware of that one. Laura Bush Foundation is another big one. I didn't investigate this one, but there's a group called Snapdragon that has grants for libraries that are out there. Let's see, the Ezra Jack Keats is out there. Alliant, again, Target. Lego gives grants. Libri gives grants. There's something called First Book, Office Depot, Barnes & Noble, Verizon, Penguin Random House, AASL, ALSC, something called Captain Planet. Maybe those of you who are more up on children's services than I am know what Captain Planet is, but I didn't. But that's another one. They've got money out there, and just by doing sort of a quick search, those were just a few of the companies that I found that are doing it. How am I doing on time here? Oh, good timing. All right, so now I want to just really quickly, this will be in the slides that you will be able to get to. Junior Library Guild has also put together a list of grants that are out there. Scholastic has a list of grants. One of the ones that I really like is done by somebody that I know, a friend of mine, Stephanie Girding, she manages a blog called Library Grants, and you can see that one, librarygrants.blogspot.com. And as she becomes aware of grants for libraries, she just pops it up there. So if you subscribe to that blog, you'll get updates frequently about grants and deadlines and links to really good articles, those kinds of things. GuideStar, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but that's another good place to go to get information about some of the organizations. Grants.gov is another place that's out there, and then WebJunction has both articles as well as information on some lists of information about getting grants. So the last piece that I want to talk about today is, so we did the why and the how and the where, now's the what. What do I need to do? What do I need to put into this grant? So we're going to talk about some of the components that go into making a grant. And again, you need to know the funder, you need to know everybody's is going to be a little different, but these are going to be common to just about every grant that you write. You want to have an executive summary. Sometimes this is the only thing that people read when they're reading grants. So you can have the greatest budget and the greatest need and all of those things buried in your thing, and if all they read is that one-page executive summary, that is going to be your key. You have got to get it all in there and make sure that it's the best that it can be. You need to identify the problem, and you need to tell them how you're going to solve it. It's the first thing that's read, and sometimes it's what they use to kick them out. I have been fortunate to be asked to read grants for the National Science Foundation, and I just got to tell you this, the National Science Foundation gives out $6 billion worth of grants per year, billion with a B. They get hundreds of thousands of grant applications every year. They have people all across the country who are reading those. And I'm here to tell you, if your executive summary doesn't catch my attention, it's gone. I don't have time. We read, the panel that I'm on, we read about between 20 and 30 grants every year. And if it's not in the executive summary, or if it doesn't look good, I don't bother reading the rest of it. I mean, I just don't have time to be able to do that. And that's a very common theme that comes up here. So again, the problem is the problem that you want to use the money to solve. So if you don't have a place for teens in your community to go someplace and they loiter around outside of Casey's, that's your problem. That's what you want to identify. Then you want to propose that solution. Something that I just learned, I've been looking at grant writing for a really long time, and I just heard this, and it really resonated with me. It really sunk into my brain. You don't want your solution to be the problem. So you don't want to say the problem is we don't have a community center, or we don't have a youth center, so I'm going to build one. You don't want the answer to be what the problem is, the fact that you don't have it. Why is that important? The problem is the issue that's out there in your community. Of course, you're going to need to put together a budget. It needs to be realistic. Again, you need to, as a part of that funding need, you need to say, how are we going to keep this going? If you're just buying furniture, that's a one-time thing. You don't need to worry so much. If you're asking to do a huge program and you want to keep it going and you have to keep staff on after this first time, how are you going to fund that staff position in the future? They need to know that. You also want to give them a snapshot of your organization. You don't have to provide a whole 12-page history of what you've been doing over the last few years, but sort of a snapshot, just a quick description of what it is you do and what purpose you serve in your community. A big piece, again, is going to be a needs statement. That's going to be in most of the grants that you write. They're going to ask you to put together a needs statement. A lot of this comes from the session that Alicia and I did several years ago. And I think there's some interesting things in here. Use statistics. When you are saying kids in our town need a place to go after school, back that up. Do you have information from teens? Do you have the manager at Casey's who says, there's 60 kids in here every day after school? Go to the census data. If any of you attended that last session with Gary, he can tell you how many kids there are in your town. You can get that data. Make sure that you're using accurate data and put those statistics in there that back up your need. Remain hopeful. When I first read this, I thought, well, that's kind of a weird thing to say. But once it was explained to me, think about this as, we are back to that solving a problem. You don't want to be so negative. You don't want to say, we've got this horrible problem in town. And that tends to be our instinct. There's this awful, horrible problem in town that's just unsolvable. People who just complain don't do anything about it. So keep that hope in there. If we can do this, if I have the money to do this, here's how the problem would get better. So yes, identify that need, use those statistics to back it up, but make sure they understand that you actually do have a solution as part of this. Focus on what it is that's unique about this. Funders love new ideas. If you're doing something that everybody else is already doing, either everybody in your town that's already doing it, or even libraries across the country have been doing this for 5 years, that doesn't make you unique. What is it that makes you stand out with this proposal? And that's exactly what you want to do, is make yourself stand out. Connect with the heart, use those statistics and keep that hope, and make sure that you've got that compelling argument for it. Make it clear and compelling. What you're trying to do is build a case for your project. The next piece then is your project description. This tends to be, next to the need statement, tends to be the biggest piece. This is the stuff that hopefully you have been thinking about for the last year as you've been working through this project. There's going to be two parts to the description: the implementation, how are we going to do this, and then the evaluation piece. Alicia was really big on this evaluation piece. She was also a grant reader for IMLS, and she said that tended to be the weakest part of all those. And I will say for the National Science Foundation ones, they also tend to be the weakest there, although they're a little bit better at it, I think, because they tend to be science-based, and evaluation is a little bit more natural part of what they do. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all this, because I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions here, and I've got a couple of tips at the end, which I maybe will share through a handout, I think, because I'm not going to be able to get to all of those. But as you're implementing this, think about what your goal is for this project. That needs to be part of your project description. Your objectives are going to be, how are you going to get those goals accomplished? And then the methods are going to be the ways, the actual pieces that are involved to get that thing accomplished. What are your staff needs? What are your monetary needs? What are the timelines? All that goes into your methods. The evaluation piece, I do want to talk really quickly about this. Libraries are really good at outputs. Outputs are those counting things. They show what you did. So it's things like, let's see, I have this in here someplace. Outputs are things like your circulation. This is how many books got checked out. This is how many programs we did. This is how many children we served. Those are outputs. What's important today? You have to have those. We got to have those numbers in there. But the really important part is the outcome. And I think the easiest way to do that is outcomes have to do with change. Look what's changed in our community because of this. So you're going to need to put something in that evaluation to show what changes. So maybe at the beginning of your grant, you're using some of that data that shows all the kids that are wandering around Casey's, or maybe you've even got an issue with vandalism in your community. Now that we have this, we're going to measure at the end of that project. Now that we have this space for teens to come after school in the library, what happened to our the vandalism statistics? What has changed in our community now? How much more in tune are our kids? Maybe we're going to talk to those kids and find out how much more connected they are to their community, and that's why they're not doing this vandalism anymore. So think about the outcomes. What has changed because of what you did? And if you can get that into your project description and your evaluation, that's going to be critical. That will put you head and shoulders above anybody else. I am not going to take my time. Yep, I'm running late. So I'm not going to go through all of the tips for success that I have. I will type these up and I will make sure they get on the website when the recording goes there. I am going to go ahead and stop sharing and see if there are chat questions that I can answer.
Yeah, we haven't gotten any more yet, but that was your time here. We got a little bit of about 5 minutes left. That'd be great.
All right, anything? Otherwise I can start rattling off the tips that I've got here. Nobody's got.
Flying through tons of info, processing. That's what,
yeah, sorry.
Michelle is saying, yeah.
I do tend to spit out a lot of information.
It's fine. That's fine. People appreciate the info, I'm sure.
All right, so I'll just start whipping through a few of my things, and then y'all can log off when you're ready. Call and ask for help. That's one of the number one tips. They want to help you get that money. That's what they're in business for. Establish that early contact. When you start talking to that person and you have a follow-up question and another question, when your grant finally comes through, now you've got somebody who has talked to you about that grant and knows a little bit more about it. So reinforce those partnerships. Play by the rules. They're going to know if you didn't do your homework on this or if you didn't do your research. And again, do your research. Plan ahead. Remember that getting grants is about the programs, not about the money. Grants, oh, this is a really cool one. I don't remember where I read this one at. Try to keep this in the back of your head. Grants are not charity. Grants are investments. That's how those funders are looking at you, as an investment. That, I think, can help you as you're writing that grant. Always say thank you, even if you're not funded. Do a follow-up call. Was there something about this that you didn't like? You know, did it not fit the rules? What was it about this? They are also very good at letting you know why you didn't get the grant. Another big one of Alicia's was pay attention to the quality of your writing. You would be amazed. I seriously have thrown grants out of the pile. I mean, these guys were asking for, $250,000, and they had really, really bad grammar. They didn't use punctuation correctly. Their spacing was all goofy, and their formatting made it difficult to understand. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, that even happens to corporations when they apply for we ask them for proposals for things and everything. Nothing looks worse than a really lousy written proposal.
Right. Don't give them a reason to throw your proposal out.
I mean, it'll definitely appear in the deciding factors.
Yeah.
If things are close.
Yep. Yep. Last thing, and then because I got a minute left. What the heck? I really like this. This was another one that I read. You want to tell a story with this, but think about it as a story that you're telling to somebody who's got just a finite amount of time. So it can't go on forever. You want to get all the salient details in there. And that, I think, goes back to that writing. So tell the story, but make sure it's for somebody who doesn't have, forever in a day. So I guess that's the end of my information. Oh, I do have one more slide. Well, I don't have my slides up, so never mind. But my contact information is there. You can find me on the State Library website if you need that. Yeah, so thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.